Clayton Stenson, the Unity Guide. Man, what a fantastic episode on our podcast. Appreciate all the advice, especially for David. Really good advice for David. But we have one last question for you. We call this leveling up with TKM. David, over to you for the question.
Yeah, thanks again, Clayton. And 100%, I do appreciate all the tools that you gave me specifically to deal with somebody like Stuart. So thank you for that. But hey, here's to the question. What is the most impactful action you have taken to level up in your home and in your business?
I'd say boundaries. So even before I started my own business, in my previous company, I actually blocked appointments with my kids. So I had like certain times of the day that were blocked. Like, so if somebody was like, "Hey, can we have a meeting at this time?" I'd say, "No, sorry, I have an appointment." And I wouldn't tell them it was with my kids, but it's like, I have an appointment. And when I started my business, similarly, I said, okay, I'm going to work these hours, which is probably very countercultural. I would say most business entrepreneurs that start up, they're like, it's got to be all in 60 to 80 hours a week. We got to put all this effort in to build this incredible business. But for me, I said, I'm not doing that. I'm going to work. So right now I work 8 to 4. And when I'm working from home, I take an hour and a half off at lunch. And I give my wife, she's homeschooling our kids, which is a whole nother challenging thing. So I give her a break. Right. And when I made that decision at the start of my business, I knew it would grow slower, but I also knew that I would have a very special time with my kids that I will never get back. So my kids right now are 7, 5, and 3. And when I started my business, the youngest was like 3 months. Right. So I'd say that's, and don't get me wrong. Sometimes I work more than that, but, and in the evenings after they're in bed, I work, a couple hours, a couple nights a week usually. But I just made a decision that I'm putting my family ahead of my business and trusting that God will grow it the way that he wants to. And I doubled my revenue the first year 2 and year 3 and 60% last year. And I'm well on track to do 60% again this year. And so God's provided. Don't get me wrong. There was challenges definitely at the start. But yeah, boundaries, just setting that in place would be the most important thing for me.
I love that. I love that, Clayton. And I don't know why. Again, we talked about this during the show, but someone can say something and it changes everything. And just the way you frame that, I just find it interesting. I never justify to somebody a meeting that I have with like another client. Like I'm like, hey, I got to jump off this call. I got another meeting. And I
Mhm.
never even think about it, never even consider
No.
justifying it, never anything. Why would I look at it differently if that meeting happens with my kid? It's just a fascinating thing that you just said. And maybe it's just for me, just kind of like, mind blowing and everybody else like, yeah, big deal. But like, I would never, if it's on my calendar, I never feel bad and
Yeah.
I never feel anything, right? Like, hey, I gotta go.
No,
I got a
you don't.
thing. And
Yeah.
nobody cares, right? But it's fascinating that we don't do the exact same filter with the things that are most truly important, wife, kids, friendships. And so, like for me, that you just gave me permission to be like unabashedly be like, hey, dude, I gotta go. I got a thing. I got
Mhm.
a thing. Right.
Yeah, and I think I actually never used to explain it, but sometimes I do now. It's like, depending on who it is, I'll be like, sorry, I gotta go. I gotta switch into dad mode, is what I'll say. And they'll be like, what do
I
you mean?
love
It's
it.
like, well, I got time with my kids. I gotta go. Right. And they're
I
like,
got
oh,
a I got
that's
an
cool.
important meeting. I got an important meeting I can't miss. I love it. I love it. Oh, it's a great example, right? It's a great example, and it'll stick. I think it'll stick. I'm going to start highlighting it. Like, hey, I got to run. I've got a date that I can't miss. And it's with my kid, and
Yeah.
you're not that important. Love you. See ya.
This is fantastic, man. Thank you for that. Guys and gals, hey, let's go level up and I'll get into dad mode. See ya.
See ya.